Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. In the last video we have discussed how would you create and attach an Azure Virtual Machine disk into Windows or Linux virtual machine. We have also seen how would you change the tier and how would you increase the size of the actual Azure Virtual Machine disk. In today's video we are going to see how would you decrease the size of the Azure Virtual Machine disk. I see a lot of people from the community are looking for a way on how to decrease the Azure Virtual Machine disk. While increasing it is a very straightforward process, but decreasing the disk is a bit of a challenge. Ready to make the Azure cloud your comfortable zone? Let's get started. All right, let's now decrease the size of the Azure Virtual Machine disk. So we have seen, how would you create a disk. We have also seen a way of how would you increase the Azure disk storage, but in this video we will see how would you decrease the size of an Azure disk. So now if you go to the documentation, you will see here that there is a lot of forums about increasing the disk size is easy, but there is any method that you can shrink the size. So when we no longer require large disk. So the problem is that when you downgrade the disk, you might lose files. That's why it's not supported. And then there is a workaround to do that. So this is the documentation. I will just this is where I'm following actually or doing the demo for today. So what we will do now is let's create a large disk and then downsize that one. So now what I will do here is I go to the Azure disks. Remember I have this Windows virtual machine. It's in West Europe. So remember to create the disks in the same region. So I will just go under disks and then click on it, create new. I will select the any resource group, and then here I just want to make sure it is West Europe. So that's close. That's next to the VM, and then I will just let's say name it disk 1. Here I will just choose whatever the availability options, and here you can see I'm creating a 1 terabyte disk and Premium SSD. So let's say by mistake you created this one and then you started to maybe save your database backups or create whatever log files or even saving just random files. So how I will resize that. So let me just create this disk and then I will attach to my virtual machine. So going back to my virtual machine and then under disks, I will attach an existing disk. So here I will select the LAN 0 and then disk 1. It's automatically picking that disk, and then I will apply the changes. Then let's log into that virtual machine. Okay, so the disk is attached successfully, and then what I'm going to do is basically RDP into that machine. Okay, I'm logged into that virtual machine, so I'm going to go ahead and right click on disk management and then initialize that disk. So let me just open the disk management full screen. So as you can see, it's automatically detected disk 2. And then what I'm going to do here is to create a partition. New sample volume. I call it F, that's fine. And then we name it here. Let's say backup. And then finish. Alright, so now here I have a full disk here, backup, which is 1 terabyte. So let's download some files and then come back. Okay, I've created the test file and then also I downloaded some files here just to simulate as if we are going to as if it's a backup data. So whatever files you have here, and of course if you have a database or a backup, if this is a backup tape for your database, you have to stop the backup service and maybe also copy that disk or create a backup from that disk. Okay, we're going to see how would you backup and restore Azure disks, but for now I just would like to let you know that we have some files here on the the backup. So now let's say this is a lot to me, 1 terabyte for a few maybe megabyte files. So let me just resize that to 10 gigabyte. So right now you cannot resize that virtual machine. You can increase more, that's fine, but you cannot decrease. So to decrease, what you need to do is to go back to the Azure portal, and then go to the disks, and then here I'm gonna create new disk. Okay, so this is gonna be disk 2. Make sure that it's in West Europe as well as the virtual machine, and then here I'm going to change the size. Okay, so here I'm going to specify a custom size, like maybe 10 gig, and I will select my my disk is to standard SSD. I want to use a cheaper one as well. So now I'm gonna click OK, and now all looking good to me. So I'm going to hit next, next, next. I don't want to create shared disk. Review and create, and then hit create. Okay. Alright, the smaller disk has been created successfully. So I have disk 2 now, which is 10 gigabyte, and then the size is standard SSD LRS. So let's also attach to the virtual machine. So under disks, I will just add existing, and then I will just attach disk 2, which is gonna be 10 gigabyte. Right. So now side by side you have the 1 terabyte disk, which is Premium SSD, and then we have the secondary disk, which is Standard SSD LRS. What we will do now is we are going to move the data from disk 1 to disk 2, and then once the data moved here, then we can delete the older disk. Okay. So let's go back to the operating system again, and then right click into the disk, and then select disk 3, new sample disk. This is gonna be maybe D letter or B, and then here we're gonna select the small disk, just to be able to distinguish between both. And then now you have disk 2. So you have the backup disk, which is the larger terabyte, and then you have small disk, which is the 10 gigabyte. Now you could just absolutely go and copy paste this to the B disk, but for a larger files, I would recommend that you use PowerShell or CMD to be able to do Robocopy command. It's more accurate and also hassle free. So what we will do now is just I'm going to go back to the documentation and then use the command that is recommended by Microsoft. So I will just open a notepad here and then go back to the documentation. You will see here that there is a Robocopy for both. If you are on Linux operating system, then you can select the Linux command and then copy both directories. And then if you are on Windows, what you need to do is just to replace X, which is going to be the source, and then Y, which is the destination, so with the appropriate drive letters for the source and destination disk respectively. So what we'll do is just we're gonna copy the command from here and then go back, paste, and then now what is my source? So my source is basically like F, right? So I will just add here F, and then the destination is B, so I will add the destination, which is B, and then copy the whole command, paste it in here, and then hit run. Boom, all the files have been copied successfully. So if I go back again, like if you want me to just walk you through that, you will see here that started on Friday. This is the log file at this time, and then the source was the F drive, the destination is B drive. And then here you can see it gives you kind of a like, you know, percentage as well, which is also more fast, more accurate, risky, and also you can control the window size or the MTU of the network interface as well, which is pretty cool if you want a faster move, like for larger files. All of these can be tweaked, right? So these can be tweaked, and then even you can stress test and see the speed of, like, you know, the disk and all of this kind of stuff through that PowerShell command. But you can see exactly how much is the speed, like, you know, per second and per minute. All of this kind of stuff are pretty cool, and some customers actually use it to test, like, you know, the speed of the disk and to see if they are getting the expected IOPS and throughput as well. Now, if I go back here to the smaller disk, I will see the exact, like, you know, the exact files, which is all good. If I open here the test file, I will see hello world, which is I entered. Now, I don't want to delete, sorry. So just don't save. I'll go back here. Now, I'm no longer needing this disk. So what I will do is just, I will make this disk offline. So I will go back to the disk management here, and then I can see my backup. So remember the names, which is the 1 terabyte disk. I can right click and then offline that disk. So what we can do is right click and then offline. So once it's offline, I just have only the 10 gigabyte disk, and then I can go back here, like, you know, detach the disk. So I can go up from here. This is my actual 1 tera disk, so I can detach from here and then click on apply. Once it's applied, then like, you know, I just can go to all disks from my search bar here. So click on disks, and then I will be able to see disk 1, which is the Premium SSD. If I open this one, I should be able to see that like, you know, it's not managed by anyone, so it's not attached to any virtual machine, and then the disk state is also unattached. All right, if I go back to the disk 2, then I will be able to see that it's on attached state, it's standard, it's 10 gigabyte size. Now we have achieved the goal. So what we will do is go back to the disk 1 and then delete that disk. So what we'll do is just click on delete and then hit delete. That's it. Nothing like as simple as that. This is, like, you know, the reference documentation that I will leave it in the YouTube description, but it's talking about how can you like, you know, safely downsize your virtual machine disk. However, you need to note that this article doesn't cover the scenario of the operating system, right? So if you have an operating system that you would like to resize, it's a different story, but it's not supported and it's risky. So but if you want to resize the data disk, it's absolutely fine. So you can just go and, like, you know, create a smaller disk and then copy the data and then delete the older disk. That's it.